Elior felt Alex's presence before he saw him move. Alex, standing by the head of the long glass table, was motionless, yet the temperature in the room seemed to drop below freezing. His own pheromones, usually tightly leashed, spiked with a silent, terrifying rage, a low, controlled current that was meant to warn, not attack. Damian, however, simply smirked, amused by the hostile reception. He was impossibly handsome, clad in tailoring that screamed quiet billions, and his dark eyes were already fixed on Elior, assessing and proprietary. "Alex," Damian greeted, his voice smooth and carrying. "Excellent meeting. And I see you finally hired someone visually engaging for the coffee run." The insult, aimed at Elior's status and proximity to Alex, was razor-sharp. Alex didn't blink. He moved with a predator's grace, not around the table but directly to Elior. In a single, fluid motion he positioned his body between the Omega and the rival Alpha. It was barely restrained, primal dominance, a nonverbal claim that sent a confusing jolt through Elior. "He's protecting me," a foolish, hopeful part of Elior's heart whispered. "He cares. He owns me," the raw, hurt part screamed, recalling the brutal efficiency of the mistake memo. Damian's smirk widened as he recognized the primitive display. "My apologies, Alex. Didn't realize your staff was so sensitive to new scents. Though I must say his Omega scent is rare. Quite sweet. Unbonded too, I presume?" Elior felt his cheeks burn with humiliation. He was being discussed like a piece of art or property, and the fact that Alex had not refuted the insinuation that Elior was his staff stung with fresh bitterness. Alex's cold facade cracked violently, the glacier suddenly splitting with deep, dangerous fissures. "The meeting is cancelled," he bit out, his voice low and devoid of negotiation. Damian leaned back, crossing his arms. "Not until we confirm the Q4 investment strategy, Draven. And to ensure efficiency, I need to review those files with your secretary alone. I'll require him as my personal assistant for the remainder of the day." The request was a naked power play, a deliberate attempt to breach Alex's territory. Alex's answer was a single, low, dangerous command, stripped of all corporate polish. It was the growl of an alpha whose territory, whose possession, was threatened. "No. He's mine." The words detonated the silence. The few board members present froze, their eyes wide, darting between the two alphas. The air became thick, oppressive, heavy with the clash of power. Elior's breath hitched. What? It was exactly what he both desperately wanted and profoundly feared. This man had paid him off and dismissed him, and now he was claiming him in front of the city's elite. Heartbroken, furious, and utterly tired of being the silent object of the conflict, Elior cut through the crushing tension. He pushed slightly against Alex's broad back, forcing the alpha to acknowledge him. "Mr. Draven," Elior said, his voice trembling only slightly but sharp with defiance. He locked eyes with Alex, letting the cold fury of his rejection show. "You don't own me." Alex's jaw tightened, the muscle pulsing visibly. The rage in his eyes turned inward, instantly mixing with raw, agonizing regret. He was caught, claimed by instinct, denied by Elior's painful honesty. Damian threw his head back and laughed, a loud, triumphant sound. "Well, that settles that, doesn't it, Alex? Seems the little Omega has a mind of his own. Good. I prefer a challenge." Alex turned away, his hands clenching into fists at his sides. He couldn't fight Elior's undeniable truth, and the look he shot Damian was a promise of vengeance that chilled Elior to the bone. The meeting dispersed in chaos. Alex stalked back to his private office, leaving Elior standing alone, trembling, exposed, and smelling faintly of two warring alpha scents. He was packing his briefcase to leave the disastrous day behind when the elevator chimed, signaling an empty descent. Elior stepped in, hitting the lobby button, desperate for fresh air. Just before the doors closed, a sleek, tailored shoe blocked the gap. Damian Crestfall slid into the elevator, his charming predator smile back in place. The small, enclosed space instantly became saturated with his musky, overwhelming scent. "That was quite the show, Elior," Damian purred, his voice low and confidential. "You have spirit. And you're right. Alex Draven is nothing but a cold, controlling machine. He doesn't know how to treat something as delicate and desirable as you." Elior pressed himself against the back wall of the elevator cab, gripping his briefcase until his knuckles were white. "I don't need your protection, Mr. Crestfall. Oh, but you do, Damian countered, taking a single intimidating step closer. He's going to break you again, Elior? His grief won't let him keep anything warm. I, however, am willing to offer you a different kind of life. A place to stay, wealth, security, a proper bond where you are valued, not just a rejected mistake. He lowered his voice, the pheromones spiking in a dizzying wave. A place where you don't have to fear who will claim you next. Elior's breath caught. Damian's offer was manipulative, political, and dangerous, but it was clear. Unlike Alex's devastating hot and cold cruelty. The elevator doors opened onto the busy, indifferent lobby. Damian leaned in one last time, his mouth close to Elior's ear. Think about it. Walk away from the broken man who threw you out in the cold. I'll be waiting. He stepped out, leaving Elior paralyzed in the elevator. The question of who to fear more, the cold alpha running from love, or the smooth alpha running toward control, spun dizzyingly in his mind. For the first time since he met Alex, Elior didn't know which was the greater danger. Chapter 2, The Collision of Old Wounds and New Desires. The message was not sent via email or an intercom. It was a curt text, sent to Elior's personal phone 5 minutes after he arrived back at his newly secured apartment. My office. No. AD. It was a demand, but for the first time, Elior refused to obey immediately. He didn't answer. He waited 10 agonizing minutes, allowing the alpha to simmer in the solitude of his frustration before finally driving back to the tower. When he arrived, Alex was waiting in the silent, intimidating vastness of his office. He wasn't behind his desk. He was standing by the panoramic window, his back to the room, his entire posture radiating tension. You took your time, Alex stated, his voice flat, dangerously neutral. I am currently off the clock, Mr. Draven, Elior retorted, walking into the room and closing the heavy door firmly. He refused to look at the powerful silhouette, instead focusing on the art on the opposite wall. Alex finally turned. He looked shattered. The CO mask was gone, replaced by the face of a man who hadn't slept, whose eyes were shadowed with an exhaustion that went bone deep. He was trying to be the boss, but he was failing spectacularly. I need to talk to you about the note, Alex began, his voice rough. He took a step forward, then stopped, as if physically restrained by an invisible chain. I need to apologize for the note. Elior crossed his arms, maintaining a rigid distance. Don't bother. It was efficient. It was clear. I understood the transaction. No, you didn't, Alex snapped, the defense mechanism kicking in instantly. You don't understand the level of control I require. I didn't mean to hurt you. I meant to save us both. He ran a weary hand over his jaw. That night, the passion, it wasn't just physical, Elior. It woke things up. Instincts. Alpha instincts I buried when Elias died. The instinct to claim, to protect, to bond. If I allow myself to want an Omega again, I lose control. The grief becomes suffocating, the fear of losing you worse than anything I can manage. He dropped his voice to a raw confession. I wrote that note to stop the bond forming between us. I wrote it to put 8 years of cold distance back up. Elior felt a sickening wave of sympathy and anger. The honesty was devastating, but the intent was still rejection. You don't get to break me and hide behind grief, Alex, Elior said, his voice laced with the pain Alex had inflicted. You used your loss as a weapon to destroy my hope. That's not saving me, that's prioritizing your own control. He turned to walk out. I've heard enough. I will see you at the office tomorrow for work purposes only. Wait. Alex's voice was suddenly desperate, utterly human. Elior heard the rapid steps behind him. Alex reached out, catching his wrist, gently at first, a light, almost pleading touch. Then, as Elior instinctively pulled away, the grip tightened, desperately, possessively. The alpha scent in the room spiked again, sharp with fear and need. Don't walk away from me, Alex pleaded, his fingers pressing hard enough to leave marks. Elior's entire body trembled, with fear, with pain, and with the desperate magnetic pull of the alpha's presence. Let go of me, Alex. I'm not a file you can claim. Alex instantly released him, stepping back as if burned. He stared at his own empty hand, then at Elior's exposed, slightly marked wrist, his expression a chaotic mix of horror and self-loathing. He had almost used his strength against the one person he desperately wanted to protect. The atmosphere was already molten, but a sudden, mundane accident pushed it over the edge. Elior, still shaking, knocked over the water bottle he'd placed on a side table. Water splashed across the front of his shirt. "Damn it," Elior muttered, rushing to the private washroom connected to the office, tugging his soaked shirt away from his skin. He stripped the shirt off in the washroom and grabbed a paper towel, trying to clean the stain. When he emerged, shirtless, tucking the soiled garment under his arm, he found Alex standing just outside the door, rigid as stone. Alex had clearly turned to leave but had stopped dead in his tracks. His eyes were wide, fixed not on Elior's face, but on the expanse of the Omega's pale, damp skin. The silence that followed was heavy with sensual tension. Alex's breathing hitched, his gaze dropping to the floor immediately, but the damage was done. His entire frame tightened, and his alpha scent, which had been frantic with fear, now surged with pure, uncontrolled, possessive heat. It was a primal, demanding scent of desire and ownership that almost made Elior's knees buckle. Alex turned away sharply, walking back to the window, his shoulders hunched in a posture of desperate self-control. Elior, breathless, realized the dangerous truth. Alex was fighting the mating bond forming between them. The instincts Elias had awakened and Elias's death had buried were clawing their way back to the surface. And Alex was losing the fight. Meanwhile, Damian's pursuit only increased the pressure. Gifts began arriving at the office: expensive wines, rare literature, and a single stunning diamond cufflink, all clearly political bribes meant to humiliate Alex. Invitations to exclusive, politically charged galas flooded Elior's inbox, with notes about a future partnership. Alex, seeing the threats mounted, grew visibly terrified. His fear was no longer about losing power to Damian, it was about losing Elior to a forced political bond. "That alpha wants more than a partnership, Vance," Alex ground out late one night, throwing Damian's most recent invitation across the desk. "He wants control of me and he thinks taking you is the easiest way to get it. And you think throwing money at my problems and writing me rejection letters is going to stop him?" Elior challenged, his heart aching. Alex looked up, the pain in his eyes so raw it was unbearable. "I don't know what to do, Elior. But I know I can't let him touch you." The tension had reached a critical mass. The past, the present, and the terrifying future were about to collide at the next social event. Alex had to choose between staying trapped in the memory of his past Omega or fighting, publicly and dangerously, for the man who was now standing half-naked in his line of sight. The gala was tomorrow. And Elior knew, with a knot of suspense, that everything was about to break. Chapter 3, The Breaking Point. The annual City Charity Gala was a shimmering facade of wealth, power, and predatory social maneuvering. Elior, looking impeccably formal in borrowed attire, felt acutely out of place. He was Alex's shadow tonight, the employee allowed access, not the partner claimed by devotion. Alex, however, didn't leave his side. He was a silent, imposing sentinel, his control radiating in tight, uncomfortable waves. The moment Damian Crestfall appeared on the horizon, Alex subtly shifted, physically boxing Elior in, making it impossible for the rival alpha to approach without causing a scene. But Damian was not subtle. Using a moment when Alex was briefly distracted by a board chairman, Damian slipped through the crowd, his timing flawless. He cornered Elior in a private hallway decorated with silent, massive oil portraits. "Alone at last, little Omega," Damian purred, his voice low and intimate. Elior took an immediate step back. "Please leave me alone, Mr. Crestfall." Damian ignored him, pulling out a slim, expensive-looking folder. "You're a liability to Alex. A distraction. A paid-off debt. But you could be my asset." He opened the folder, revealing a marriage bond contract. "Sign this. Become my bonded Omega, and I will secure your future forever. You will have a family name, status, and the guarantee that no one, not even Draven, can hurt you again." Elior looked at the contract, then back at Damian, his resolve firm. "I don't want forced status. I want choice. And my choice is not you." Damian's charming mask dissolved, replaced by a flash of cold, alpha rage. "You refuse me? A proven alpha who can give you everything for the cold shell of a man who wrote you a severance check." He grabbed Elior's wrist, pinning him forcefully to the marble wall, the contract fluttering to the floor. Damian sent spiked, thick and smothering aggressive pheromones designed to overwhelm and subdue the Omega's will. Elior's knees instantly weakened, his breath catching in his throat. The primal instincts to submit fought desperately against his fierce intellect. He can't break me, he thought, even as a whimper threatened to escape. Just as the pressure became unbearable, a deep, lethal growl shook the air, vibrating through the hallway. Touch him again and I end you. Alex. He was a blur of righteous fury, his elegant suit now simply the skin of a barely contained monster. He didn't hesitate. He slammed into Damian, a shoulder check of pure, unadulterated alpha rage that sent Damian crashing against the opposite wall, the impact echoing sickeningly. The two alphas clashed, physically violently. Fists flew, the sounds muffled by the thick carpet. Damian fought with skill and arrogance. Alex fought with the savage, desperate intensity of a man defending his only remaining tether to life. Their scents collided in the air, a burning, toxic storm of dominance and fury. Staff and security rushed in, horrified, finally managing to pull the two powerful men apart, their clothes torn, their breathing ragged. The scandal hit social media within the hour, video clips of the brawl circulating instantly. Billionaire CEOs fight over unbonded Omega at Charity Gala. Alex, disregarding the chaos and the concerned faces, dragged Elior by the arm into the nearest private staff room, slamming the door shut. He was shaking, not just from the fight, but with a terrifying mix of fury, fear and helpless, overwhelming desire. He looked terrifyingly unhinged. You let him touch you? Alex demanded, his voice low and thick with a possessive, dangerous tone. Elior shoved him back, his own adrenaline-fueled rage erupting. You told me I meant nothing. You told me I was a mistake. What was I supposed to do when a powerful alpha offers a contract while the man I actually want offers a note and a cold bed? The accusation hung heavy and damning in the air. Alex looked utterly broken. You do, he confessed, the admission raw and torn from his deepest fear. You mean too much. That's why I ran. That's why I pushed you away. The confession, the truth he had tried to bury, broke them both. Elior shoved him again, tears of fury and pain finally spilling over. It's too late. Alex responded with an instinct he couldn't control. He slammed Elior against the wall, not violently but with a fierce, desperate intensity, pinning him with his body. The air became molten, suffocating with their combined pheromones, Alex's dark, commanding scent, Elior's frightened, yielding sweetness. It's not too late, Alex growled, his face inches from Elior's. I won't lose you again. I won't let him claim you. The tension was overwhelmingly sensual, the line between primal rage and desperate connection dissolving into molten need. Alex's eyes dropped to Elior's mouth, the unspoken plea for a kiss, for a claim, for a desperate reassurance of life, hanging in the hot air. But Elior, trembling, placed his hands on Alex's chest and pushed hard. I won't be your mistake, Alex, he whispered, his voice trembling with finality. And I won't be your redemption. You have to fight your demons, not just other alphas. He shoved past Alex, leaving the shattered alpha in the dark, silent staff room. Elior's chest heaved with the force of his departure. He was terrified, but he was also free. He had walked away from the man he loved because that love had become a weapon. He was halfway home when the news alert popped up on his phone, chilling him to the core and snapping the story into the final high-stakes conflict. Headline: Damian Crestfall files petition with Alpha Council. The article continued. Crestfall claims Alexander Draven is emotionally unstable and unfit to interact with an unbonded Omega, citing the public brawl and the prior death of his partner. He demands the council grant him guardianship and bonding rights over Elior Vance. The Alpha Council has granted a hearing. The battle had moved from the boardroom to the court. Alex was not fighting for love anymore. He was fighting for his freedom and his sanity, with Elior's fate hanging entirely in the balance. Chapter 4: Claimed, Chosen and Free. The Alpha Council hearing room was not a courtroom. It was a chamber designed for authority, power and final judgment. The council, three ancient, severe alphas, sat elevated, their silence radiating an unyielding gravity. Damian Crestfall arrived confident, charismatic and manipulative, his scent clean and controlled. He presented himself as the stable, secure alternative, a man who offered logic and status over Draven's erratic emotional displays. Alex arrived late. He was cold, silent, and visibly unraveling. The weight of his fear was almost visible. He sat at his table, a powerful man reduced to a nervous wreck, unable to defend himself against the cold, logical dissection of his grief and past failure. Damian's lawyer opened with the memo, the brutal, typed evidence of Alex's rejection, framing it as abandonment and emotional abuse. When Elior Vance was finally called to the stand, the room stilled. Elior, though nervous, walked with the hard-won dignity of a man who knew his own worth. Damian's lawyer finished his ruthless summary. Mr. Vance, we have proven that Alexander Draven is erratic, incapable of sustaining a relationship, and actively rejected you via formal memo. We have shown that he views an Omega as property to be paid off or fought over. Do you, Elior Vance, fear Alexander Draven? The room held its breath. This was the final, defining question. If Elior said yes, the council would side with Damian, and Elior would be forced into a guardianship bond. Elior turned his head slowly, ignoring the council and the smirking Damian. He looked only at Alex, the cold CO, the man who saved him on a frozen night, the broken alpha trying to be whole again, now sitting small and defeated, unable to speak in his own defense. Elior took a deep, steadying breath. No, Elior said, his voice clear and resonant in the silent chamber. I do not fear Alexander Draven. The council members stirred. Damian's face twisted in shock. I fear losing him, Elior continued, allowing the raw, honest truth to finally emerge. I fear that his past will consume him and that he will choose a cold memory over a warm future. He looked at the council. He hurt me not because he didn't care but because he cared too much. He pushed me away out of fear that I would die like the last man he loved, and that he would be left shattered again. The council looked at Alex, demanding a response. Alex finally spoke, his voice raw, hoarse with emotion that was barely contained. I rejected him because I loved him, he confessed, the words a tear in the fabric of his tightly controlled world. Because the last time I loved an Omega he died and I spent 8 years frozen. I couldn't risk the warmth again. Elior stood up, walked across the floor of the formal hearing room, a decisive, final action. He stopped next to Alex's chair, putting his hand over the Alpha's trembling, powerful one. It was a gesture of choice, not submission. And I'm alive, Elior said, looking at Alex, forcing the broken man to look up and meet his eyes. Choose me, Alex. Choose now. Choose the warmth, not the past. Alex squeezed Elior's hand, his eyes shining with unshed tears, the coldness finally, irrevocably melting away. The council had seen enough. The confession, the choice, the clear, uncoerced devotion. The head council alpha slammed his gavel down. Case dismissed. The petition is denied. Mr. Crestfall, your predatory conduct is noted. Do not challenge this pair again. Afterward, in the chaotic relief of the hallway, Alex didn't speak. He simply pulled Elior into a fierce, protective embrace, crushing the Omega against his chest, burying his face in Elior's hair, breathing in his scent like a life-saving drug. They returned to the penthouse, not as CEO and employee, not as broken people, but as two men who had fought their way through hell and chosen each other. That evening, the penthouse was dim, quiet, and filled only with the promise of warmth. They stood in the center of the living room, the city lights reflecting in the glass walls. Alex was still slightly trembling, fear a hard knot in his gut that only Elior could untie. He didn't demand or claim. He asked. Elior, Alex asked softly, his eyes dark with devotion and rediscovered life. May I touch you? Truly touch you? Elior took his hand and placed it firmly over his own heart. You don't have to ask any more, Alex. You never did. Their kiss was slow, reverent, and heavy with the weight of the future they had just fought for. It was nothing like the desperate, drunken need of the first time. It was a covenant. Alex carried him to bed, not with drunken desperation, but with devotion, every touch a promise, every whisper a prayer. The ghost of Elias was finally laid to rest, not forgotten but no longer a barrier. Elior woke the next morning in Alex's arms. The silk sheets were warm. The spot next to him was not cold. Alex was awake, watching him, his expression one of profound peace. Stay, Alex whispered against Elior's hair, the words a soft, final resolution to their entire story. Not because you must, but because you choose me. Elior smiled, a profound, happy light filling his eyes. I choose you. Always.
Thank you for sticking with us through the whole story. I hope you enjoyed it, and the ending was as fulfilling as you expected. Please like, subscribe, and comment your thoughts. If this is your first time, you are invited to check out other videos on the channel. You might find something you would enjoy. It's my pleasure to entertain you. See you in the next one. Stay in the love.